And then I will turn it over to Keith Sherburn. He will be facilitating this discussion and getting us started. So Keith, whenever you are ready, you can take it away.
All right, thank you, Jenny, and good morning, everyone. As Jenny mentioned, I'm Keith Sherburn. I serve as the National Weather Service Severe Weather Program Coordinator. But today I'm pleased to share the stage with several different representatives from different mutual aid initiatives across the agency. Some of these programs will no doubt be familiar to you. Others are probably going to be new. So we're hopeful that you'll leave this presentation with just a greater understanding of the different services that are available out there. If your office needs specialized assistance in a given situation, or if you have a specific skill set that you're looking to put to greater use as well. And on the title slide here, I do have a link to a Google site. This goes to the National Operations Center, and we do have kind of a dashboard set up by one of the representatives here today, Matt Beitscher, that will give you a little bit more information on each of the different programs that we'll be talking about today. So before we get to the programs, I wanted to just provide a brief background on mutual aid across the Weather Service over the last decade or so and our more recent work to unify these efforts. So in the past 10 plus years or so, we've seen several different mutual aid initiatives that have organically emerged through grassroots efforts, either at the regional or local level, to meet the needs and fill the gaps that are in place with our current operating model. So these programs operate in a manner similar to the Virtual Operations Support Team or VOST concept, and a diagram showing that is provided at left, in which you can surge specific skill sets wherever they're needed and whenever they're needed as well. So in this way, mutual aid supports mission critical operations while also providing individuals with the opportunity to leverage their unique expertise and passions. And we see that in all the different programs that will be represented today. The functions that have been provided and continue to be provided by these programs have been largely successful and well received. There have been several references in either recommendations or best practices from NWS service assessments of high impact events, and just from testimonials of individuals and offices that have leveraged these programs in the past, we can get a sense of how important they really are to the operations that we provide. So about a year ago, leaders from the different mutual aid initiatives began meeting regularly with an aim to develop a unified National Weather Service mutual aid program. And this group has several goals. We have a few of them listed here, such as establishing consistent policies and procedures, finding mutual aid's place within the new operating model as we move forward, and just the NWS organizational structure more generally, determining how to identify and train subject matter experts in each of these initiatives, and increasing awareness of the available mutual aid services, which brings us to where we are today. I'll also note that the group here held a workshop in May to discuss many of these items in more detail and to develop a vision moving forward. And Trevor is going to dive into more of that at the end of the presentation. So without further ado, let's dive into the overviews of the mutual aid programs currently operating across the Weather Service. As I noted earlier, some of these that are listed may already be familiar to you, but we also have some relatively new or niche initiatives that you may be hearing about for the first time today. So I'm going to start by turning it over to Kate Abshire, who will be speaking on dam break mutual aid. So Kate, take it away.
Hey, thanks, Keith. Good morning, everybody. Like Keith said, I'm Kate Abshire. I'm here at the Water Program at Weather Service Headquarters, and I'm really happy to be talking to you all today, representing the broader dam break mutual aid team. I want to say, first of all, hopefully you've never worked a dam break event, and hopefully you never will. But they're a really key example of a rare high impact event that unfolds really quickly and tests our ability as an agency to respond. So you're asking maybe why do mutual aid for something that is hopefully really rare? But unfortunately, our infrastructure is vulnerable and is aging, and coupled with the number of flood events that we're seeing, information suggests that dam incidents are really a building threat. Just to throw out some statistics at you, of the 90,000 significant or high hazard dams across the country, the U.S. Society on Dams reports at least 4,000 of them are in poor condition. You may be also asking about our mutual aid initiative. Don't we already kind of do this, where the WFO reaches to the RFC to provide additional technical information and support? Yes. And I want to be really clear that our mutual aid team isn't changing that paradigm. We're not replacing the duties of the WFO or the RFC, but the team's role is to leverage our subject matter experts throughout the agency to support you when a dam break does happen. So if that's not enough, the vulnerability of infrastructure, when it rains, it pours, and research shows from past incidents that dam breaks, no surprise, are most likely to happen when flooding is already ongoing, really taking a lot of resources from offices that are already doing a lot of work with other flood duties during an event. So while the RFC remains the main point of contact for WFOs during a dam break incident, our mutual aid team is able to take advantage of those subject matter expertise throughout the agency where flooding might not be happening to help support these incidents. So Keith, if you can go on to the next slide, I want to give you just a high-level overview of how the dam break team can help provide you with that support. First and foremost, that's technical support. So the folks on our team are really great hydrologists and hydraulic engineers and are able to run a variety of dam break models to really understand different outcomes that could happen given the information that you might have from partners or the public about what's happening with the dam failure. Outcomes of that modeling then can facilitate information sharing between the WFOs, the RFCs, and the ROCs involved without taking additional time from responding to an ongoing flood event. Our mutual aid subject matter experts are really good at evaluating the modeling results and then condensing them into actionable talking points that anyone at an RFC or a WFO, even if you're not familiar with dam breaks, can use to brief your partners. As we go around demonstrating these capabilities, we're working on refining the format and the content of our situation reports so that we can provide the best and most relevant information to you to support IDSS and try to reduce that burden as much as possible. I also want to emphasize that a dam break incident usually involves a sudden flurry of activity where the reports come in and a lot of information gathered initially, but then very often the situation continues to evolve as information continues to flow in, pun intended, and get additional clarification or information about the scenario and incident. I want to reassure folks that the team is not kind of set up for a one and done model. We have processes in place so that a subject matter expert stays with the incident or transitions to another subject matter expert to continue to provide additional modeling, additional information, and updates as the situation evolves. So for the last slide, I'll just say thanks for the opportunity to share about our team today. I really encourage you to visit our website from the link shown here or the QR code. It has really, really good resources that are good to check out before a dam break incident occurs, but it's also the way to initiate mutual aid support from our group. But please click around there and see some of the exercise materials we have posted, some training and background to familiarize yourselves with our team and some of the information that we offer about dam break routinely and in mutual aid. You can also connect with the dam subject matter experts at the Slack channel listed there, the NWS dam break, NWS only. If you have questions, even outside of the mutual aid framework, that's where our folks are monitoring that to provide assistance. And if you want to learn more or have really specific questions, please feel free to email Peggy Lee, who's our current team lead from the National Water Center. Her email address is there. Thanks so much, and we'll look forward to hearing from you.
All right, thank you so much, Kate. I'm going to pass it on next to Matt Beitscher, who will be speaking about GIS mutual aid.
All right, thank you, Keith, and hi everybody. Matt Beitscher, lead meteorologist at WFO St. Louis. So yeah, I'll be talking a little bit about the GIS mutual aid team. So if you've ever looked around and saw other WFOs or other entities within the agency making some really slick looking maps and wondered, how can I do that myself? Maybe you don't have GIS experts in your office. That is really what our group is for. Here are a few on the slide. Here are a few services that we can provide to any entity within the agency, whether it's at the national level or down to the local level. These dynamic maps that are created through ArcGIS Online and through the NOAA Geo platform, which can be shared at various degrees of publicness, for lack of a better word. So if it's something that will be used more broadly, we can certainly make those data sets public, but we also work very closely with FEMA to share certain data sets in a little more close-knit way. We also provide static maps that are created and are sent as PNGs, GIS data sets like geotips that partners can use and analyze and provide more rich analysis on their side of things, and really any other ad hoc kind of requests. GIS is a very broad term for a lot of different services that we can provide both internally and externally. Internally, for example, we've handled requests where a WFO was doing a change to its zones. We were breaking up zones into smaller kind of zones, and they wanted to redo a data set and provide partner resources as well as internal resources for that zone change. So we handled that. Another example of an internal request would be what you see there on the bottom of the screen or behind the rainfall maps from Hurricane Ian is difference maps for vegetative index, which allows us to analyze damage patterns and tornado damage swaths. That would be more of an internal request. And then we have external requests like FEMA, state emergency management, local emergency management sites asking for data sets after a specific event. The possibilities are pretty endless. And we have a wide range of expertise in our team, from those dynamic maps and data analysis to dashboard creation, story map assistance, really anything you can think of in terms of a GIS need. Our team is certainly there to provide some support. And if we go to the next slide, it's pretty easy to request that support. You can go through the GIS mutual aid request form, which is linked here, and it's also linked on that website from the National Operations Center that Keith referenced earlier. It'll email our group automatically. You should hear from us relatively quickly, and then we'll look through the availability of the group and send an email to you all and any of the other points of contact that are listed. And then we will work as quickly as we can to complete the request, especially depending on the urgency of the request. This may take varying degrees of time. It's certainly not as time sensitive as requesting assistance for a dam break. And then we will communicate with the offices, and we will keep the regional operations centers informed in our Google chat room there. And that Google chat room is also a really nice place just to ask general questions about our GIS program. And if you have just a quick hitting question that maybe doesn't fit the need of a request, you can go ahead and submit something in there. But that's pretty much all I have. I could talk for about an hour about all the services we provide, but I want to give more time to our other excellent mutual aid programs. So I'll stop right there.
All right. Appreciate it, Matt. Thanks so much. I'm next going to turn it over to Kate Guillet and Vicki Oliva. They're going to speak about SAVI, or the Supplemental Assistance Volunteer Initiative.
All right, thanks, Keith. Like Keith said, my name is Kate Guillet. I am the Warning Coordination Meteorologist at WFO Huntsville. I'm one of the national leads for the SAVI program with Vicki and Trevor. So SAVI, we've been around for a little bit, so hopefully a lot of you have heard of the program already. But if not, it stands for Supplemental Assistance Volunteer Initiative. So in a nutshell, SAVI is activated whenever there's a high impact event expected at a WFO, and the influx of information from online sources is expected to overwhelm the office that's impacted. So too much information, not enough eyes on it. The SAVI team can help with that. So in its infancy, it was mostly, social media reports, monitoring Facebook, X, Snapchat, other internet sources, and kind of consolidating that information and what would be usable for the office, what the office would need to know, and sharing with that real time during an event. So when an office is expecting significant weather, they fill out the Google form. So similar to the other mutual aid programs, there's a Google form right now that you fill out quick and dirty. It takes just a minute or two. And that emails all of the SAVI volunteers within the program. And this can either happen ahead of the event, if you're anticipating an impactful event like a tropical type of system, but it can also be activated immediately. If for some reason, you weren't expecting an impactful weather event, then all of a sudden something unfolds very quickly and the office becomes overwhelmed, you can activate immediately. And this can be due to just staffing shortages, just not enough people, or it can also be activated just because there's just too much information for even a fully staffed office at full capacity to be able to monitor at one time. So then all the volunteers will then check into Slack, and they will begin data mining and relaying any useful information to the activated offices. Next slide, please. So SAVI started in 2015, so it's actually been active for a decade now, and it originally started in Southern region. And between the years 2018 and 2022, we expanded into Western, Central, Eastern, and Pacific regions. And hot off the press, relatively soon, we will have Alaska region also in the program, in which case we'll be in all regions within the Weather Service. And in that time, 70 plus activations of the team. We have 250 plus volunteers that come from WFOs, CWSUs, national centers, RFCs. And as of right now, we have 81 WFOs on board in those different regions. Slide, please. So what does the result look like when you activate Savvy? So the Savvy volunteers will put all the information they find, all the useful reports into a Google Sheet that the activating office will have access to and be able to monitor. They'll also be putting the reports in Slack, and that's where the activating office can interact with the volunteers and kind of direct them as to what kind of reports they need or which areas they need reports in. And that will all be within Slack and Google Sheets. Now, the team can also draft up work LSRs within Iris if an activating office would like that. It's not required, but it is a functionality that the Savvy volunteers can do if that would help out the office. They don't send out any live LSRs. They will save them as work LSRs, and then that gives the office the opportunity to go in, quality control, and issue them as needed. But mostly what I've talked about is data mining social media, and internet sources, but some of the other types of requests that have come to the Savvy volunteers have been compiling information on all of the power outages in the CWA, or plotting the reports that were received in the DAT as other points so that the office could kind of see if any of those lined up with a potential track within their area. So as of right now, these are the primary duties that we've participated in, but there is expansion within the Savvy team as to how the volunteers can help operations during impactful weather. But with that, that's all I have.
All right, perfect. Thank you, Kate. And Vicki is also on the line. She's one of the co-leads of the Savvy program. So if you have any questions, you could reach out to either Kate or Vicki, or stick around afterwards as well. We'll have some time for Q&A, I think. So next up will be a familiar face, especially for a lot of the Central Region folks on the line. It'll be Jenni Pittman. She'll be speaking on both the RMA program, the Remote Mesoanalysis program, and convective warning mutual aid. So Jenni, take it away.
All right, thanks, Keith. So I'm sure many of the folks on this call are familiar with the Remote Mesoanalyst program. So I'm going to quickly overview it, but then also highlight some of the similarities and maybe differences from some of our other mutual aid programs. So just a couple of stats from this year. We updated this in mid-June, so probably a couple more events since then, but 210 separate events since the program's inception in 2020, 40 events so far this year, and it's pretty on track with last year. We ended up with a total of 77 events last year, but pretty similar pace to last year so far, and that totals more than 1,800 hours of real-time support. And averages out to about 9 hours per event, but we've had some that have gone over 24 hours. We've had 6 multi-domain events so far this year, so cases where we have so many offices requesting, we have to split them into multiple domains, and we had 8 of those in 2024. And it was pretty rare before 2024, so that's really ramped up within the last couple of years. We have about 70 facilitators on our list. There are 15 that are still onboarding. We require an onboarding process, which includes an exercise, an evaluation, and then also a required list of training, just so that we can make sure everybody's kind of at a similar baseline before they provide support. And so far this year, out of those 70 facilitators, we've had at least 23, I think maybe even a couple more since June, lead facilitators, so 23 different. So within that list, at least we're seeing multiple people that are able to jump in and have the time to do that support. So on the next slide, you will see the design that we use for RMA, and it's a little bit different from some of the other efforts in that we have this open chat room, Mesoanalysis 1, where we allow anybody to come in. They don't have to be affiliated with the program. They don't have to be a volunteer or a SME. Anybody that wants to geek out about the weather can come into Mesoanalysis 1 and share their thoughts. And then we do have that SME that is assigned to helping the offices. They are taking that information out of Mesoanalysis 1, providing their own insight as well, and then communicating that directly to the offices. And we have the offices in 1 or 2 focused chat rooms where that facilitator can just distill the information, make sure they're communicating what's important, and provide it directly to those offices. We have feedback that this has really helped within the watched warning gap with DSS messaging. It's improved situational awareness, and also feeds into warning decision making, even though we're not talking directly about warning decision making. The environment is obviously a key component of that. So we've found through feedback and then also through a study that Zach Utek is helping us with, that warning performance has actually increased due to RMA support, or at least during RMA supported events. So on the next slide, you can just see some of the positive feedback that we've gotten. I didn't go through a lot of the logistics of like how you request. It is Google form as well, so will be easy to unite with some of the other programs in the future. But people have provided a lot of positive feedback on this. I think it's something that's really important, and hopefully will continue to expand in the future. So that's all that I have from RMA, and then I will go on to convective warning mutual aid. And for this one, it's part of this group just because it used to be a more expanded initiative, and we've actually pulled it back a little bit, which I'll talk more about in a second. But just starting with the concept here. So this is a one-on-one mutual aid provision. So you have a SME that is supporting just one warning forecaster. And since the warning decision-making process is pretty stressful and pretty intense, we want to make sure that that warning forecaster is not distracted by having to read chats or go to a separate place or any of those things. So they are just communicating audibly like we are now on Google Meet. And the person that's making the warning decisions is sharing their screen, and that is their AWIP screen, their warning decision-making screen, with that SME, so that the SME can weigh in on things like polygon design, length of the warning, making sure there aren't any counties that they didn't mean to include, weighing in on the hazards, the tags that they put in for IBW, all of those things. So it's very much like someone standing over your shoulder helping you with that decision-making process. But in this case, that person is a SME that is in a remote location. So on the next slide, you can see just some details about it. Again, we use Google Meet, and that EpiFan device is how we share our AWIPS monitor. A lot of our central region offices have this already. And to request support, it's pretty informal right now, just because right now we've limited this program to just our Nebraska and Iowa offices. So pretty informal right now. We have a chat room with all of the facilitators where we can just kind of go back and forth. We have a calendar where they can indicate their availability, but ultimately, if someone wants to request support, they just email me or Randy, and we will help kind of facilitate that if needed. The reason that it's limited to Nebraska and Iowa right now, if you've ever tried to start a grassroots effort, it's usually easier to start with a smaller group, and we started with a kind of large group and had trouble just finding people that felt a sense of ownership and didn't assume someone else was going to do it. And so when we limited it back to the smaller group, we've really seen more enthusiasm, more willingness to try, and it's just been a lot more successful. So hopefully in the future we can expand this out, but we're really enjoying how it's going so far in our little test pod. So that's all that I have from convective warning mutual aid, and we will move forward.
All right, thank you, Jenny. Very great. Next, going to turn it over to Orlando Bermudez. He's going to talk about the Multimedia Assistance in Spanish program, or the MAS program. Orlando, take it away.
Thank you, Keith, and good morning to all. Want to be talking about the Multimedia Assistant in Spanish team. Orlando Bermudez, like Keith just mentioned, out of the San Antonio Weather Forecast Office. And the MAS concept started back in 2017 during May, the month of May. And shortly after Hurricane Harvey impacted the Corpus Christi and Houston area. So I'll let you know more about this here in a second. But we have collaborated with different centers, such as the National Hurricane Center, also the Storm Prediction Centers, and the River Forecast Center, just to make sure that the community, the Hispanic community, is well aware of the impact of weather. So that's why we started with this concept back in 2017. And shortly after 2018, they, instead of just a regional concept out of Southern region, we became a national team. Next. So back in 2017, like I just mentioned, the group started, like 30 people were interested to assist. And it is a group of National Weather Service forecasters, and that includes also non-forecasters such as ASA and even IT that were willing to help with Spanish translation. So back in 2017, during Hurricane Harvey, we got activated on translating products for Corpus Christi and the Office of Houston, it was so remarkable to go ahead and translate a flash flood emergency for the Hispanic community when it was needed with the amount of rainfall amount that was falling in the Houston area. And the year after, in 2018, during Hurricane Michael and Florence, during Florence, we conducted about 100 plus interviews. Our team, what we do as a team is we translate material such as one page or social media messages that can go out really quick. Also, small document, but also we have a group that are really good on doing interviews, and we do local interviews, also state interviews. We do interviews for emergency managers and also international interviews, such as radio stations calling from Colombia, Venezuela, and CNN in Espanol. So with that said, the service assessment was conducted for both for the 2017 and for 2018, and they highlighted the MASH team to be vital to aid the Hispanic community when it comes to severe hazards. Next. And here is the MASH in action. These are several graphics from different offices, and even including the West Gulf River Forecast Center, like I mentioned earlier. And there's so much more when it comes to helping out other centers. So we've been around for a little bit. We are excited for this opportunity as we come all together with the mutual aid concept. And if you have any question, please send me an email to orlando.bermudez@noaa.gov. And definitely more information you can find about our team in the mutual aid Google site. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you, Orlando. We appreciate it. All right, next I'm going to turn it over to Maggie Hurwitz, who's going to provide an overview of the relatively new Climate Services Mutual Mission Support Program. So Maggie, go ahead.
Thanks, Keith. Yes, I'm Maggie Hurwitz at Weather Service Headquarters and representing, I think, the newest mutual aid program. So with Climate Services Mutual Mission Support, or CSIMS as we call it, we're not just filling gaps, we really are trying to envision kind of the future model for providing climate services across the country. And by climate services, we're incorporating some seasonal to seasonal or S2S IDSS, climate data, and drought services. We're planning to launch this effort in a couple of phases pretty soon. First, piloting with some volunteer WFOs who especially need support, particularly working with Central and Southern region, and then expanding in a second phase to any WFOs that need support, as well as providing routine climate service and drought services support. We've already recruited a team actually now of 18 volunteers from across the country with a variety of expertise in data, drought, S2S services, and with a variety of available time. So we're trying to be inclusive at the moment of people and their many needs at local offices. Yesterday, we had our first summer workshop or working session where we actually had the volunteers performing climate services tasks and fulfilling requests using our workflows in Slack, and especially trying out sort of providing services in an office or a region that's not their home office. So, and learning sort of what the barriers and opportunities are there. We're planning a second workshop in August to try out some of these workflows and kind of give our volunteers more in-depth training in these service areas. So next slide, please. This is just a rough listing of the roles and responsibilities as we see them sort of in a fully implemented version of this mutual mission support team. As you can see, the CSIMS volunteers really hold a lot of the responsibility here, serving as specialists to provide these services across the country and reducing the burden of effort to the local offices and kind of embedded staff, say it, state liaison offices, though we envision those offices would still be able to make requests to the team as needed, for example, for an upcoming event or heat wave, for example. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, we've recruited a bunch of volunteers, but we're looking for more and also looking for any WFOs that are interested in being in the first phase of our pilot. Other ways you can get involved are joining our Slack channel, the Climate Services channel, where we're sharing news and huddles and other upcoming events. And we shared the link here to our Google site, which includes a lot of the resources that our volunteers are using and climate tools and so forth. So thanks.
Great, thank you, Maggie. That sounds like it's off to a really good start there, so I'm happy to hear that. All right, next I'm going to turn it over to Robyn Heffernan, the NWS Fire Weather Program, to discuss mutual aid and fire weather services, and she'll be wrapping it up for the programs today. So Robyn, go ahead.
Great, thank you, Keith. Good morning, everyone. I'm Robyn Heffernan. I'm the Fire Weather Services Senior Advisor for the agency. And today we're going to talk a little bit about the longstanding mutual aid that we've had in place in the Fire Weather Program for over 28 years. We've had our IMET program. It is not the same as the other mutual aids you heard about today, but it does share some conceptual similarities as well as some long-term lessons learned that we can apply to future mutual aid efforts going forward. Like I said, the IMET deployment program has been around for 28 years. On average, we deploy 117 missions per year, although we've done as high as 217 in a given year. And so far this year, we've done 30 IMET missions to date. The IMET program is built on three things, mainly: trust, tracking, and taking care of our own. Firstly, trust. We know that when an IMET deploys to an incident, largely their success in being able to provide services that are utilized and decisions been made on those is based in trust. And we send IMETs from all over the country to incidents in other regions of the country. And so in order to do that, we've had a robust training program and certification program put in place to ensure that regardless of where an IMET comes from or where an IMET goes to, that we can still expect the same quality of excellence from that IMET and quality of forecasting service coming out of that IMET. So that's, like I said, a robust training program, but also a qualification and certification program as well. That's a lot of several deployments as a trainee for on-the-job training. Next is tracking. Larry Van Bassem, our operations manager, has a very in-depth tracking system for maintaining IMET availability. When IMETs are available from their office to deploy with regional agreement and so on, and then where that IMET's going with robust statistics as to how long it took from when the request came in to when we fill it with a name to when they actually get on site to an incident, which, by the way, is 24 hours or less in almost all cases. And then finally, taking care of our own. One of the biggest things that we have found in the IMET program is that when you go out and you support these high impact incidents, and it's the same thing if we do mutual aid, even if you don't leave the office, there is a lot of stress and exposure that comes with that. And so in order to maintain a cadre that is equipped to fill that role and has resilience as a program, we really need to maintain and look out for the mental health of all of our IMETs in the program, all of our forecasters across the agency. And we also have a critical incident stress management unit with a particular lead now in Boise here, Mike Proud. He's our CISM lead that will work one-on-one with our IMETs and deploy resources as necessary to support them for incident within an incident type situations. Then finally, I just wanted to follow up a little bit about the future of mutual aid that we see in the fire weather program. Although we will need some technological advancements to get there, we see the future of mutual aid being in the areas of spot forecasts, where we do around 30,000 spots a year in this agency. So being able to help when an office has an influx of spot requests in a given time period to help with that workflow, as well as the emerging service of fire detection notifications to our land management agency partners and first responders that have proven to save many lives over the past several years that we've been starting these services in areas. And that is all I have for fire. Thanks, Keith.
Awesome. Thank you, Robyn. Yeah, thank you so much. And yeah, I think I could speak for everyone in saying that we really appreciate all the work the IMET program puts in. I think it provides just such a great example of what the agency could do in terms of leveraging the expertise that's out there. So with that in mind, so we've heard from all the individual programs. So I want to turn it over now to the co-lead of the NWS Mutual Aid umbrella program here, Trevor Boucher, for our vision and next steps.
Thanks, Keith. Yeah, so as Keith mentioned, I'm kind of wearing two hats on this call. One, to be the co-lead of this kind of larger effort of all these mutual aid programs kind of coming together to work together. But I also run the Savvy program with Kate and Vicky. I've been doing that since 2015. So I'm very happy to see all of these programs that have birthed in their different ways and kind of all doing a similar kind of concept of helping the field deal with the burden of the operations during especially their highest impact type of situations or very specialized type of situation like a dam break. So you've just heard over the last half hour just all the different programs that were represented in this team. There's even more that are being built as we talk about the staffing levels that we currently have. So what we've really been trying to do with this larger group, the team of teams, if you will, is think of moving into the future that all of these different programs are fixing or are trying to deal with like capability gaps that we have in our current operating model. But they also are dealing with like specific specialized expertise or situations where you might be dealing with, we might not be able to get to that if we don't have that, we haven't done that in several years. And so they're very specific types of expertise that you could really use in your office, and not every office has those things. And so how can we do that in the future operating model as part of what we're looking at strategically as a larger group? And we actually have the audience of the operating model team. We actually met with them yesterday and to kind of pitch some of these ideas. But what you're seeing on screen is one of our like shorter term goals is you've just heard about all these different disparate teams that have places that you go, different ways to activate. They might be similar in how, but you have to go to these different places to do so. So one of the short-term goals that we have that we've already completed is to create sort of like a menu of all the different programs that exist. And it exists on the NWS Operations Center webpage. And Keith can share that resource for you. But all the programs you just heard about, here they are. So if you go to the Op Center Google site, you'll see on the top right, there's a section called Mutual Aid. And then it lists actually just all of the different ways to get to the program's Google sites, which has all of their activation information, has an explanation of how the programs work, a little blurb there about what they actually do, should you need a reminder of what they actually do. So this is a great starting point in the short term of saying like, well, what are all the programs exactly and where can I go to find them? And here's where that can exist. But that's step one. So step two is actually us consolidating into hopefully one larger overall team. In fact, we want to call this teams, trusted experts advancing mission support. So essentially everything you just heard, what if we were all one big team and you as the WFO only needed to know, oh, I need help with, I need one the team's group to help us. And so it isn't so important that you know what program it is, but that you need this particular type of expertise deployed to your office virtually. And so what we're hoping to design is sort of a unified front door. This would be something that you only have one thing that you have to fill out in order to get this sort of support. And then let us do the coordination of that and deploy who is needed to where you need it to go. So some of those things that we'll be talking about is, like I said, a unified front door, kind of a common operating picture, so that we're all operating in a similar type of way. Informing policy decisions to enable us to do that. For instance, right now, a lot of our mutual aid efforts, some of them have been approved for comp time and overtime for the volunteers, some of them have not. So how do we clarify some of those things? So as you see on the screen here, you have developing, these are the sub-teams that are kind of working on amongst all of us to really get it out there and clarify and streamline these things. And probably most importantly is what kind of, can we move towards a model where we're developing expertise and that expertise is deployed, not as a volunteer type of situation, but we're following more of like an IMET model, which is still volunteer, but more of the IMET model where you're expected to report in these types of situations. So that's really what we're advocating moving forward, is that these programs are not just volunteer grassroots efforts, as Jenni had mentioned, but now institutionalized in our future operating model, that there's a division for mutual aid, perhaps, something like that. So we're working on how that actually fits with what the new operating model will look like. So we already have our little working group, and so we're trying to get that formalized. And then we'll be talking about how we can move that forward. But we see on the right there is kind of the vision of what we're hoping to do here, is that you as a WFO, you push the help button and then help arrives. So you don't have to figure out why or how that happens, but you push the button and help arrives to support you in the situation that you're dealing with. So as Ken Graham had just mentioned on the most recent virtual all hands, is mutual aid is a part of our everyday life moving forward. And that is the case. So we're hoping to evolve our programs so that it can best fit you and be the most convenient and intuitive. And that when you push the button, we're there and reporting. So I wanted to take this opportunity to give you an opportunity to ask questions. We have all of our mutual aid programs here represented. So if you had a question about volunteering, or if you had a question about how to get more involved, how to get your office spun up, anything like that, this is the opportunity to do so with all of our audience here to be able to answer those questions. So Keith, I'll pass it back to you to facilitate the Q&A, but we can kind of do that at this point.
Excellent. Yeah, thank you, Trevor. And yeah, if anyone has any questions, feel free to pop those in the chat or go ahead and raise your hand. We'll call on you. There's a lot of information, I know. There's a lot of programs out there that are ready to help you as needed. I really appreciate everyone attending this morning as well. I will note there are a couple programs as well. All folks are thinking about questions. It looks like Matt has one now, but I was going to note we have a couple other programs or initiatives that weren't represented today. One being the post-storm damage assessment mutual aid, which is currently limited to a Slack channel, but there was an Insider article about that a couple of weeks ago. If you want to learn some more information about that, you have SMEs available to help out with the storm damage assessment process. And there's also the tropical troubleshooting team that we need to work on getting a status update on, but I know that's available for folks who deal with tropical weather a little bit more frequently. All right, so question from Matt for Robyn. I know it's in the very germane stages, but how does one get involved with a fire weather mutual aid? Asking for me, not a friend. Sure, Matt. All right, Robyn, go ahead.
Thanks, Matt, for the question. Contact me if you're interested in getting involved. Most of what we've built in the IMET program is from folks like yourselves getting together with great ideas and making them happen. And so, like I said, we are going to be waiting for some technological advances with AWIPS in the cloud to be able to fully do a mutual aid for spot and fire detections, but there are some things that we can do in the meantime, as well as you could be help putting the plans together for that future state when the technology capabilities become available. Thanks.
Cool, thanks, Robyn. Trevor, go ahead.
I'll sort of like impromptu do sort of a panel, since we have all of our people here, and ask kind of a question to all of the leads of the programs. Is open-ended, anybody can answer from your perspectives. I know we have brand new programs and some that have been around for a decade. So what has been like one of the bigger challenges of getting your program off the ground and getting it socialized and used? Anybody can answer this question, but what has been like the biggest challenge at getting this to the point of adoption? Jenni.
I'll bite. Separate problems for both of the programs. For RMA, it went off the ground really quickly to the point where we get requests almost every time there's a risk, especially like an enhanced or greater. And our SMEs are in forecast offices for the most part. They're having difficulty getting freed up from duties, especially as they're providing routine mutual aid. So SME availability is the biggest problem that we've seen with the remote mesoanalyst program. And then for convective warning mutual aid, the biggest problem is that it's just something that not everyone's comfortable having feedback on. It's probably our most visible and most important product. And sometimes it's uncomfy to ask for help, especially if you don't know the person that's providing support very well. So that's been a hurdle there, but neither one of those are things we can't overcome, just things to note.
Absolutely. I'm putting my savvy hat on. A lot of those things were similar when we tried to get things off the ground in 2015. It's just there was a lot of discomfort on having somebody they don't know helping out in the highest impact of events. For understandable reasons, you don't want things to be more complicated in the WFO when you have one of those events. But I think we've proven that you can do a lot of things transparently, but you do have to trust your peers in other parts of the agency to do so. Matt, I think your hand up was next.
Yeah. So for the GIS mutual aid program, there's been a couple of challenges. The first one that I think is the most all-encompassing is for folks in the field to recognize the need for GIS mutual aid. GIS is very squishy, for lack of a better word. So it's, how can GIS either aid operations or enhance your analysis of an event or help your partners? Really, that's those are the three prongs of our team: is internal use, partner use, and even public use. So it's that's been one thing. The other one is training our subject matter experts on those various services that we provide, because GIS is an ability, it's a science, really. So to do GIS is not enough. You have to have an expertise in a certain realm of it. So those two things are probably the main challenges we've faced, but some of them are going to be addressed by bringing us all together under this umbrella program, and especially with the awareness aspect of things. As we continue to support WFOs and regions season after season, our busy season is hurricane season, we are getting more exposure, we're showing people our capabilities, and slowly but surely we're getting more diverse requests, which are really exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things that we talk about as a sub-team is what is expertise, and how do you develop that, and how does that fit into these moving forward? So I think that moves really nicely into kind of what a lot of the vision has been. Is the new operating model talks about developing specializations and developing expertise. This is maybe that pathway and the infant stages of us doing that in the current operating model. And so the larger team is built to try to tackle that. So I'm glad that you brought that up, Matt. Maggie, you're next.
Sure. Yeah, I'm representing the Climate Services Mutual Mission Support Team. So I would say on one hand, we're at the stage of recruiting volunteers, and we've had a really good turnout, and our volunteers are really dedicated. But I think a challenge, like some of the other teams have said, is the lack of dedicated time for climate services. And our volunteers are competing with other responsibilities and forecast shifts and so forth. And then sort of an ongoing challenge with climate services is that it's just not as urgent as, of course, there's no fire or, immediate convective threats or anything. So just getting people's attention for something that isn't quite as urgent in the time scale. Thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. And Robyn brought this up too, is that while the IMET program is volunteer, I don't classify it as the same thing that the rest of us are dealing with, because that IMET gets to leave the office, be out of the rotation, and focus only on that particular thing. And so what we would really like to do, ideally, is that be able to have a similar type of design where those folks are dedicated to that particular mission at the time. So how do you actually do that? And that's something that we're going to be working with the future operating model on team to be able to figure out how to enable, if at all. Kate, you're next.
Yeah, maybe Orlando should go first, because I think actually my comment relates to what Brian just put in the chat, so I can answer them both at once. Maybe.
Fantastic. How about you, Orlando? Let's go.
So one of our biggest challenges, and as far as these teams, we're a little bit different because we deal with translation. So we have a group of 40, like I mentioned earlier, but we pretty much between 20 and 25 that most of the time are basically available, but from those 20, half or a little bit more than half are able to do interviews, versus a short amount of people like to do translation because it's not easy. You can translate anything to another language, but when it comes to weather, it is a different level of translation. So we try to be able to translate into the weather realm of things, but it gets sometimes complicated because depending on what part of the world you come from, one terminology could be totally different from where you came from to the United States, and then you try to translate that to here, and you think you're doing the right thing, and you probably are offending someone. So we make sure that when we do these translations, we quality control between us, 3, 4 people before they go out, just to make sure that we were saying the right thing.
Yeah, and it warms my heart that you're on this call, Orlando, because you and I remember talking about the infant stages of the MOS program when we were at Austin, San Antonio. So it's awesome to see that how successful it's been since then. Kate, did you want to go?
Yeah, so Brian asked about standardized training and certification to ensure consistency of service, and that was actually going to be, I think, maybe what I wanted to bring up for the Dam Break team as they launched. You know, Jenni talked about the relationship and trusting the person on the other end of the line, right, or at the other end of the phone. And current dam break operations, right, where the WFO would contact the RFC that services their area, you know, you're much more likely to have a pre-existing relationship with that office and be able to sort of talk back and forth and share some known information. But when we sort of expanded that domain right to anyone who has that dam break expertise being able to respond, we wanted to make sure, because it's such a highly technical process, usually to initiate run models, we wanted to make sure that a WFO or RFC reaching out to a mutual aid team would know exactly what processes were being followed, what models were run, where we started with assumptions, what information we needed. And so the team created a lot of material and proposals before we even launched to sort of say, okay, you know, first we'll take this approach and then we'll follow up when more time allows with this kind of modeling, and then we'll follow up with this kind of modeling. Here are the procedures to checklist. We have this incredible information flow diagram and procedure diagram on our website that shows exactly what the SMEs are expected to do each step of the way and the common models and tools that they're expected to use. So we got all of that out of the way, which is great. And that also enables us to develop some more training to sort of say, you know, this is the process you're expected to follow. If you're at your RFC responding to your WFO, you know, all systems go, do what you need to do. But if you're responding in this capacity, a WFO needs to know it, or an RFC needs to know what to expect. And we brought that back to your bigger question, Brian. I think that positions us and the dam break team in kind of a unique place, maybe with the other mutual aid teams, in that, for the most part, that response is fairly, you know, regimented, regulated. You sort of know what to expect with well, you don't know what to expect, but you know the processes to respond to a dam failure and provide that information. But sort of how you spin somebody up and make sure that they maintain consistency and proficiency going forward when there are relatively few events is something I think we are thinking about, and we're also talking about with the broader group. So there may be other folks that want to weigh in on how their mutual aid team is approaching.
Yeah, and largely, Brian, that's one of the things that's part of our sub-teams, is how to develop that training and how to develop expertise. And that's implied in there, is that if we start talking about things like pulling people out of operations and being dedicated to something happening like remotely elsewhere, say a landfalling hurricane in Miami can be supported by a Met that's in Seattle, right? So if that's happening, what is expected? What is the process to be able to do that? It's not just, oh, they asked me to, so I'm there. Sorry, you have no control over that. That needs to be built in. But what needs to be implied is that you are a value that is needed there, right? So developing that specialization is something that I think all of us across the agency wish we could be doing more of. We're just not afforded the time because of our current operating model requiring us to have all of this local operations first, and then you have to be a master of all, right? Or, you know, along those lines. So that's really the direction we're leaning, is trying to figure out how to enable. Kate's example with dam break is a great example of when I was a forecaster in a WFO. Yeah. Did we have procedures and things about dam breaks? Yeah, but we had to practice that so irregularly if we were lucky to ever really talk about it. And now you have a team of people that are literally developing training and going through all of this certification process and developing highly specialization in these situations in which they occur. I do want Kate over me to be handling that situation, or at least informing me on what we should be doing in those situations that are super rare. That's why I think these are so valuable. Go ahead, Keith.
Yeah, I'm just going to note in the midst of all that, like, it's important for us to find a way to develop an on-ramp for the folks who are really passionate about some of these things, but may not have the skill set yet to be, known as a subject matter expert. So that's one of the things that we're keeping in mind within that sub-team of establishing SMEs, is how do we give folks that opportunity to become experts and to contribute based on their passions. And with passion in mind, I want to go back to something that Jenni mentioned before. In this environment we're at right now, in terms of relatively short staffing, this is when mutual aid is needed the most, and yet it's probably the most difficult for us to actually get facilitators, because as we hang on to the legacy operating model, there's still these things that take precedent, even though folks may want to help out with high impact events across the country. So that's one of the things we've really been emphasizing in our conversations with the ops model team, change management unit, and the other folks at the headquarters level, is the expansion of mutual aid adoption is going to walk hand in hand with the evolution of the operating model, and it has to. Because the last thing we want is for these people who are passionate and who dedicate their time in these volunteer programs to get burned out. And I know that we're already seeing that to an extent, but we can't afford to make it get any worse.
Absolutely. And as I think Savvy has the largest group of roster of volunteers, which is well over 200. We've had a decade head start for some of them, so that is not super surprising. But at any given activation that we have to support, we might have 2 that actually are available in any given day. Maybe sometimes 0. Sometimes there's just nobody available, and so that's everything you just mentioned. It has everything to do with not necessarily having, being enabled to do these types of things, time differences, shift priorities, all of those things that get in the way to really do it when the field is trying to support the field in these situations, are the challenges that we have. So rather than plugging holes in the dam, sorry, Kate, not to pick on the dam break, but instead of plugging the holes there, we're actually trying to build a whole new dam. We're trying to create a different infrastructure for this, so that it's built into the future operating model and not just addressing gaps. And we don't really want to get into the business of addressing gaps of the future operating model, and that's not what we do. We want to be able to build it in so that it's part of how we actually work every day. I can envision a situation where a lot of our programs no longer are activated. They just are always working, so that you don't even need to ask for them. They're just supporting you always. So in a vision moving forward, maybe that's how some of these programs might evolve. Yes, Brian, exactly. And so one of our challenges is going to be calling audibles along the way, so that it does support whatever the future holds, as far as what is the staff doing in the WFOs. So are we supporting those things that are either moving to different places, or are we supplementing those things that are happening still in those local offices? So those are all the right questions, and our group, I think, is the right people to answer them. I see we have 1 minute left, so Keith, I'll leave it to you for 5 words.
I'll just thank everyone again for attending. If you have any questions about the broader mutual aid program, you can reach out to me or Trevor via email, keith.sherburn@noaa.gov or trevor.boucher@noaa.gov. And if you have questions about the individual programs, feel free to find their information on that National Operations Center site and reach out to them directly. But Jenni, I'll turn it back over to you. I don't know if you have any closing thoughts as well for the Innovation Spotlight.
Nope, that's it for today. Thank you everyone so much for attending. This recording should be posted in a couple of days if there's anyone that you'd like to share it with, and I'll make sure that I let everyone know when it's available. So thanks again everyone for presenting and for attending, and we will see you next time.